Well, in this video, we are going to reflect a graph, which really kind of is like making a mirror image of it, or you can also think about it as rotating it around one of the axes. We're going to reflect it around the x-axis, and then we're going to do the y-axis. Okay, so what we're looking for is the graph of this is the graph of y equals f of x reflected about the x-axis. So what that means is if the graph is up here, it's going to be reflected over here, down here. If the graph is below the x-axis, it's going to end up above. Or whatever portion of the graph is below the x-axis will end up above. Whichever part is of f is above the x-axis is going to be below the x-axis. So we're just kind of spinning it on this x-axis right here. So that means the height, for example, if you had a point right there on the graph, it's going to show up, whatever this distance is, we're going to go downward. It would end up right down here. Okay, so that means the height, we're taking the opposite of the height. So f of x is the y value. So instead of f of x, we just put a big negative sign in front of it. That's all we do. Okay, so let's demonstrate this by graphing f of x equals absolute value of x, which is this one. And then g of x could also be written g of x equals negative f of x. Correct? So it's going to look like this. This will be g of x. And this one is f of x. So just a reminder though, if let's say we had something else like, let's say j of x is 2x squared minus 8. Well, what would negative j of x look like? If you put a negative sign in, it means multiply the whole thing by negative 1. So you'd have to say negative parentheses 2x squared minus 8, which really becomes negative 2x squared plus 8 when you distribute it through. Okay, so make sure you put parentheses or brackets around the entire function when you put the negative sign in front of it here. Every sign is going to change. All right, the next one is reflection about the y-axis. So here's the y-axis. So now instead of rotating it around the x-axis, spinning it around this one, we're going to spin it around this axis. So everything on this side will now be a mirror image on this side. Everything that starts out on this side will be a mirror image on this side. Okay, so what do we think this would be? The graph of what? Is this graph reflected about the y-axis? Well, if there's a point up here, I now want it to be over here. So instead of, say, f of 3 equaling 2, I want f of negative 3 to be 2. So this is going to be f of negative x. All right, so what's the difference here? That means if you start off with an f of x, all you have to do, literally all you have to do is change every x into a negative x. Put a negative sign in front of every x. Okay, so we know what f of x equals radical x looks like. 0, 0, 1, 1. Radical x I'm going to go out to 2, 3, 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So it looks something like this. Well, just do a mirror image of it over here. Like that. So this is g of x, and this is f of x. And just one final comment about this. You know, you might think, or you might say, the square root of x is not defined over here. The square root of x is not defined for negative numbers. But this is the square root of negative x. So when you plug in a -1, well, this negative sign turns it into a +1. So we always have non-negative numbers underneath here. We could, you know, we could plug in a 0, but if x is a -4, negative, the opposite of -4 is a +4. So that's reflection about the y-axis.